She didn't think humans were dangerous. Not really. To her people, humans were this soft species, emotional, unpredictable, fragile. But that was before she watched one man stand alone on the shattered deck of a dying star freighter, facing a creature that could tear armored soldiers in half. No weapons, no exosuit, just his hands and that strange fire in his eyes. And when he moved, fast, brutal, unstoppable, she felt something she'd never said aloud before. Something she whispered only to herself. I wish he was mine. If scenes like that spark your imagination, you're in the right place. Hit like, tap subscribe, and share this with someone who loves a good HFY twist. It helps the channel more than you think, and it keeps stories like this coming your way. Now, buckle in, because things are about to get intense. The first time Commander Rhea Valoran saw a human up close, she expected someone small, harmless, maybe even a little awkward. Her academy textbooks described humans as adaptable but underdeveloped, a species whose strength came from improvisation rather than physical capability. In her mind, they were clever, emotional, sometimes chaotic, but never dangerous. Never the kind of beings who could change the course of a battlefield. But that was before the Ha-eun drift. The drift was supposed to be a simple escort mission. Rhea, daughter of House Valoran, heir to one of the most respected strategic families in the Ashur Dominion, had boarded the Dominion research freighter Solène to supervise a routine transport of newly collected Starbee samples. Nothing dramatic, nothing heroic, just 15 cycles of quiet monitoring, paperwork, and polite diplomacy with the freighter's mixed-species crew. Among that crew was one human, Sergeant Jax Calder. He barely spoke during introductions, just nodded, offered a polite half-smile, then returned to his work terminal. No ego, no bravado. For someone rumored to have survived 3 border skirmishes and a pirate ambush, he seemed strangely ordinary. His uniform sleeves were rolled up, revealing scarred forearms, but he carried himself with a calm stillness that made him almost fade into the background. Rhea didn't think much of him. She had more pressing concerns, an unusual reading in the Starbee's containment data, a minor navigation drift, and the faint worry that her father would disapprove of her taking such a low-risk assignment. She spent most of the second cycle inside the lab cluster, reviewing creature behavior patterns. That's when the alarms began. A sharp, gut-punching shriek of metal echoed through the ship as something slammed into the hull with enough force to tilt the deck. Lights flickered. A second impact followed, heavier than the first, making several researchers stumble into storage consoles. Unregistered boarding signatures, someone shouted. Multiple. They're phasing through the hull plating. Rhea froze. There is only one species known to phase through reinforced hulls without using breach pods. The Korth. Predators of the dark webs between star lanes. Bone-armored monsters built for ripping, tearing, consuming. They didn't invade ships for resources. They invaded for sport. Rhea's throat tightened. If even one of those creatures got into the research cluster, the casualties would be catastrophic. She snapped into motion. Seal all lab doors. Activate internal dampening fields. Evacuate. A deeper crash swallowed her words. The security viewport at the far end of the hallway dented inward, metal bending like thin foil. Something hit it again from the other side. Hard. Researchers scattered in panic. Rhea grabbed a pulse rifle from the emergency rack, her hands shaking against the polymer grip. She'd trained for combat, but training never mimicked the cold dread crawling up her spine now. Fall back, she shouted. Move. But before her team could retreat, the viewport burst open with a sharp, wet crack, and a Korth warrior stepped through the mangled frame. It was bigger than she remembered from Academy Holos. Nearly 3 meters tall, all bone plates, serrated claws, and lunging hunger. Its eyes snapped toward the group instantly. Rhea fired first. A burst of blue energy slammed into its chest. It barely staggered. The creature hissed, low and vibrating, like air dragged across a blade. Researchers screamed and scattered. Rhea tightened her stance, preparing to shoot again, when a blur of movement cut across her vision. Someone shoved past her. Someone human. Sergeant Jax called her. He didn't hesitate. Didn't ask questions. Didn't even look frightened. He simply charged straight at the Korth with no weapon drawn. "Are you insane?" Rhea yelled, but he didn't answer. The Korth swung its clawed arm at him in a killing arc meant to shear through armor. Jax ducked under it with a speed she couldn't track. He stepped in close, almost chest to chest with the beast, and drove his elbow sharply into a seam between its bone plates. The Korth roared in pain. Pain, something she had never seen a pulse rifle achieve in a single hit. What was he? Jax moved differently from her soldiers, differently from any humanoid she'd ever studied. Every motion was efficient, instinctive, almost primal. He didn't fight like a trained soldier. He fought like someone who'd been surviving since birth. Another claw swept toward him. He caught the creature's arm, twisted sharply, and used its own momentum to slam it into the deck. Bone cracked. The Korth thrashed, screeching in fury, but he kept moving. No hesitation. No fear. Rhea stared, pulse hammering in her ears. Humans weren't supposed to do this. Humans didn't overpower Korth warriors with their bare hands. She watched, stunned, as Jax stepped onto the beast's chest, grabbed two of its bone plates, and tore them apart with a brutal yank that made her stomach flip. The Korth went still. Silence hovered over the corridor. Ragged, stunned silence broken only by the rasp of Jax's breathing. He looked up at her, sweat beading at his temple. "You okay, Commander?" She opened her mouth, but nothing came out. How was she supposed to answer that? How was she supposed to form words after witnessing something that shattered everything she believed about his species? Instead, she managed a shaky nod. Jax gave a brief, relieved exhale and stepped off the creature's corpse. But the quiet didn't last. More impacts. 3, 5, 7. They thundered across the hull like fists pounding on a coffin. Rhea swallowed hard. "There are more coming." "I know." Jax wiped blood, not his, from his knuckles. "We need to get you to the bridge." "Me?" She blinked. "Why me?" He met her gaze with a strange intensity, steady, fierce, unwavering. "Because you're the ranking officer. And if they're hunting, they'll go for command next." The logic made sense. The way he said it, though protective, focused, it hit her unexpectedly. She stepped back, trying to compose herself. "You shouldn't have engaged that thing alone," she said, voice softer than she intended. "You could have died." His lips twitched in a faint, tired smile. "Yeah, but you would have died if I didn't." Her chest tightened, not from fear this time, but something uncomfortably warm. She pushed the feeling down. There was no time for it. They ran. The ship shook violently as more Korth began tearing through outer layers. Echoes of metal shredding vibrated through the halls. Emergency lights strobed red across the corridors, casting Jax's silhouette in sharp flashes as he led her through maintenance paths and emergency lifts. At one point, the lights flickered out completely. Pure darkness swallowed the hallway. Rhea froze. "Jax!" A hand, warm, steady, touched hers. "I'm here. Keep close." Her breath caught, not from fear, but from the unexpected comfort of his touch. She didn't pull away. "Why? Why are you helping me like this?" she whispered in the dark. He didn't hesitate. "Because humans don't leave their own behind," he said. "And right now, you're one of mine." When the lights returned, he was already scanning the corridor ahead, jaw tight, body poised for another fight. And in that fleeting moment, watching him stand ready against impossible odds, she whispered something so quiet she hoped no one would ever hear it. "Why do you make me wish you were mine?" She didn't understand the feeling. Not yet. But she would. The bridge of the Solen was supposed to be a place of calm command. Polished consoles, crisp hollow interfaces, quiet confidence. But when Rhea and Jax reached it, the scene was chaos. Officers barked orders over one another. Sparks rained from overhead conduits. Hull integrity warnings flared across every display. And outside the panoramic view shield, nothing but darkness, punctuated by dozens of hard, jagged shapes drifting closer. Korth raiders. Rhea felt her stomach drop. There weren't just a few attackers. There were entire hunting packs closing in, their bone-plated forms illuminated by the eerie glow of the dying star nearby. One of the bridge officers shouted. "They're anchoring onto the hull. We can't shake them." The ship jolted violently as something slammed into the lower decks. Then another. Then another. Lights flickered. A distant scream echoed through the comms. Rhea clenched her jaw. "We need to reroute all power to internal defense grids. Prep emergency evacuation nodes. Jax, seal the forward." "Commander," Jax said quietly, nodding toward the view shield. A larger shadow drifted into sight. Massive, winged, its body covered in thicker bone plating than the others. Its claws were as long as starbay bulkheads, glinting with captured starlight. A Korth prime. Rhea's breath faltered. They sent a prime? Here. That wasn't a hunting party. That was an extermination. Even the bridge crew fell silent as the prime turned its skull-masked head toward them, as if it could see straight through the shield and into their terrified faces. "They don't do this," Rhea whispered. "Not without provocation. Not unless something enraged them." Jax's voice was low, steady. "What were you transporting, Commander?" She swallowed. "Research specimens. Star beast offspring. Nothing fully grown. Were they stable?" She hesitated. That was answer enough. A sudden bellow, deep, ground-shaking, boomed through the hull. The crew flinched. Rhea's heart hammered painfully. The Korth prime flared its bone wings and launched itself toward the bridge. "Brace!" The impact hit like a meteor. Consoles shattered. Officers were thrown to the deck. Rhea crashed against a railing, pain exploding through her shoulder. She blinked through the haze and saw Jax wasn't on the floor. He was moving, already pushing to secure fallen officers and steady a collapsing console. "Jax!" she shouted, stumbling upright. He turned, not afraid, not panicked, but focused, deadly focused. "Commander, we need to isolate that prime. If it breaches..." It already breached. The ceiling buckled. Bone claws tore through metal. A monstrous roar filled the bridge as the prime began ripping its way inside. Officers scrambled back. Pulse rifles fired uselessly at the tearing ceiling. And Rhea, gripping her side, felt panic creeping up her chest. A Korth prime could kill everyone in the room in seconds. "Jax, there's no way we survive this." His eyes snapped to hers. "We're not dead yet." She wanted to believe him. Stars, she wanted to believe him. The ceiling gave way with a shriek, metal raining down like jagged hail. The prime dropped into the bridge, its massive frame dwarfing every person present. Bone spines rattled. Its breath steamed in the cold emergency air. It scanned the room, then locked on Rhea. Her heart sank. She was the ranking officer, the head of the mission, the one it needed to eliminate to break the chain of command. Before she could raise her rifle, Jack stepped right in front of her. "Get behind me." His voice wasn't loud. It wasn't angry, but something in it made her obey before her brain even caught up. The prime lunged. Claws the size of swords slashed toward them. Rhea flinched. Jax didn't. He threw himself forward, catching the creature's wrist between both hands. The impact was so heavy it cracked the deck beneath his boots. For a split second, Rhea swore gravity bent around him. Or maybe she just couldn't comprehend what she was seeing. Jax held the prime's arm. A human, holding back a monster 3 times the size. The prime snarled and swung its other arm. Jax ducked, rolled beneath the razor swing, and slammed his fist into the underside of its jaw, right at a weak point between bone plates. The sound echoed like shattering stone. The prime reeled. Rhea stared, disbelief roaring through her veins. "How are you doing this?" Jax didn't answer. He didn't have time. The prime lunged again, faster this time. Its claws tore across the deck, barely missing him. He slid under its strike, grabbed its plating, and used its own momentum to flip himself onto its back. Someone on the bridge gasped. Rhea's pulse spiked. Humans weren't just adaptable. They were terrifying. The prime thrashed, wings flaring wide. Jax clung on, driving his elbow repeatedly into the base of its skull. Each hit made the monster stagger but not fall. The prime slammed its back into the ceiling in an attempt to crush him. Metal buckled. Sparks burst. "Jax!" Rhea screamed. He dropped from its back just in time, landing in a crouch that looked far too smooth for someone dodging instant death. He sprinted toward the creature as it turned on him with a roar that made every instrument tremble. The bridge crew, watching with wide eyes, whispered among themselves. Humans aren't that strong. No one can fight a prime. What is he? Rhea didn't have answers. All she had was the growing realization that every assumption she'd ever held about humans was wrong. Completely, dangerously wrong. The prime lunged again. Jax met it head-on, sliding under its massive chest and striking upward with a brutal punch to its throat. The creature gagged, stumbling back, clutching its neck. Jax didn't let it recover. He grabbed a detached metal support beam from the debris, spun it like a staff, and drove it straight into the prime's eye socket. The creature shrieked, a horrible, bone-grinding sound, and collapsed sideways, smashing consoles as it went down. The bridge fell silent. Jax stood over the fallen prime, chest heaving, blood spattering his arms. His eyes, dark and burning with something fierce and ancient, slowly lifted toward her. Rhea's breath caught. She had never seen a look like that. Not from any soldier. Not from any species. It wasn't rage. It was survival. Pure, unstoppable primal will. He walked toward her, stepping over the ruin he'd made of a creature that entire squads struggled to kill. "You hurt?" he asked. She blinked. "And no, I'm fine." He nodded, relief passing over his features before he turned back to assess the bridge. But Rhea couldn't stop staring. Her voice broke without warning. "Jax, humans aren't supposed to do that." He wiped a streak of blood from his cheek. "Most can't." "What are you saying?" He hesitated, just long enough to make her pulse quicken. "There's something you don't know about my species," he said quietly. Something the Dominion never documented. Before she could ask what he meant, the ship's alarms blared again. More boarding. Multiple decks breached. Structural collapse imminent. Jax stepped closer to her. "Commander, if you want the truth about humans," he nodded toward the door, "then you're going to have to survive the next 10 minutes. Rhea swallowed hard, because suddenly, she wasn't sure surviving was the hardest part. It was trying not to fall for the human who fought monsters with his bare hands. Rhea had seen fear before. The paralyzing kind, the kind that crawls up the spine and squeezes the breath out of soldiers' lungs. She had seen panic ripple through ranks, seen officers crumble under pressure. But she had never, in her entire life, seen a crew fall silent in the presence of a single human. Yet that's exactly what happened as Jax Calder strode out of the ruined bridge, motioning her to follow. Officers pulled themselves together after the fight with the Korth Prime, but every one of them stepped aside for him. Some avoided eye contact. Others watched him with wary fascination. One young comms tech whispered, "Is that even human?" before catching Rhea's glare. She didn't blame them. She wasn't sure she knew the answer either. They moved quickly through dim corridors, lit only by flickering emergency strips. Metal groaned. Distant screams echoed from lower decks. The ship wasn't just damaged, it was dying. Rhea kept close to Jax, though she didn't fully understand why. Logic said she should be at the helm, coordinating reinforcements. Her heart said something else entirely. "Where are we going?" she asked, trying to match his pace. "Maintenance Sector 3, Jax said. "There's a sealed path to the auxiliary nerve center. If we get there, we can manually restore internal barriers. And if we don't," he glanced at her, "then the Korth got the ship from the inside out." Simple, brutal, human. But something in his voice carried weight. A shadow of something deeper, something personal. "You sounded like you knew this would happen," she said. "Like you expected it." "I didn't expect a prime," he replied. "That was new." "Then what did you expect?" He didn't answer immediately. Instead, he slowed at a corner, listened for movement, then signaled her forward. Only when they stepped into the next empty hallway did he speak. "You know why humans were never given full military integration in the Dominion?" he asked quietly. "Because your combat output is inconsistent," she recited from memory. "High adaptability, but unpredictable under stress. Emotional volatility. Unstable neural." He stopped walking. Rhea nearly bumped into him. "Do you believe that?" he asked softly. She opened her mouth, then closed it. She had believed it. Her academy taught it. Every Dominion archive taught it. But after watching him fight, after seeing him take down a prime with nothing but raw force and instinct, she whispered. I don't know what to believe anymore. Jax drew in a slow breath. Then I'll show you. They descended a ladder into the lower maintenance levels, moving through the dim orange haze of backup lighting. Hissing steam and sparking conduits painted the narrow path in shifting shadows. Rhea had always disliked this part of the ship. Too claustrophobic, too exposed, too easy for something to hide. And something was hiding. A soft clicking echoed from events. Jax grabbed her arm and pulled her into a side alcove just as a Cord Scout crawled along the ceiling, bone claws digging into metal. It paused, sniffed the air, hunting. Rhea held her breath. Jax didn't breathe at all. For a terrifying moment, the creature's head turned their way, eyes glowing faintly. Rhea's heart stuttered. Jax slowly reached up, pressed a finger to her lips, then motioned downward. Stay still. Stay silent. Stay behind me. The scout eventually moved on. Rhea exhaled shakily. How did you? Humans learned to stay quiet long before we learned to speak, he murmured. There was again that strange, unsettling weight in his words. She needed answers. She couldn't function without understanding what was happening. Jax, she said as they resumed moving. Back on the bridge, you fought like nothing I've ever seen. That wasn't training. That was instinct. He didn't deny it. Humans aren't built strong enough for that, she pressed. Not physically. Not according to Dominion physiology metrics. They aren't. His voice was calm. Not normally. She frowned. What does that mean? It means the Dominion tested the wrong humans, he said. The wrong environments. The wrong histories. He glanced at her. You've read our physiology reports, but have you ever read our pre-space history? Some. Enough to understand the basics. Jax shook his head lightly. No. You saw the soft version. The curated version. His brow tightened. You never saw what humans really came from. Rhea hesitated. What are you saying? Humans evolved surrounded by predators, he said quietly. Creatures bigger, faster, stronger than us. We survived by fighting things we had no business fighting. We survived by becoming something different. You're talking about adrenaline, she said. Stress reactions. Fight or flight. He gave a faint, humorless smile. That's the word scientists came up with when they didn't want to accept the truth. And the truth is, humans don't have fight or flight, he said. We have fight and fight harder. Her breath caught. Before she could reply, a nearby bulkhead shook violently. A Korth slammed into it from the other side, snarling. Jax shoved Rhea behind a support column. The creature burst through the wall. Rhea raised her rifle, fired 3 shots. Each hit staggered it, but didn't stop it. The Korth lunged at Jax with a feral screech. He didn't dodge. He stepped in, caught the creature's arm mid-swing, and shoved it backward with brute force. The Korth crashed into the exposed wiring, shrieking. Rhea stared again, mesmerized, terrified, drawn in all at once. Jax breathed heavier now, sweat sliding along his jawline. But his eyes, stars, his eyes, burned with a wild, relentless intensity she'd never seen in any species. That look, she whispered. I saw it on the bridge too. He leaned against the bulkhead, catching his breath. It happens when humans are pushed too far. What happens? He hesitated, and for the first time since she met him, Jax looked vulnerable. We change. She stepped closer. Jax, what are you afraid of? He met her gaze with raw honesty. I'm afraid that if I push too far, I won't come back. Her pulse quickened. Come back from what? From a thing humans used to be, he said. The thing we buried under civilization. The thing that kept us alive when everything else wanted us dead. She swallowed. You think that's what happened on the bridge? What's happening now? He didn't answer, because something else answered for him. A siren blared overhead. Alert! Behemoth class signature detected. Hull penetration imminent. Rhea's blood ran cold. Behemoth class? There's no way. It's here, Jax said, eyes narrowing. We need to move. Now. They sprinted through the maintenance passages, the ship trembling around them as something enormous latched onto the hull. The sound wasn't like the other breaches. No sharp tearing or clawing. This was deep, resonant, like the groan of a dying leviathan. Jax, what is a Korth behemoth? She asked breathlessly. The worst thing they grow, he said grimly. A living war engine. She stumbled at his tone. He had fought a prime with his bare hands, and this thing scared him. When they reached the auxiliary nerve center, the doors were half crushed. Smoke poured out. Sparks danced inside like scattered fireflies. "What now?" Rhea asked. Jax turned to her, sweat slick, breathing hard, jaw tense. "Now," he said, "you see the truth." She stepped closer. "What truth?" "That humans weren't meant to be soldiers," he murmured. "We were meant to be monsters." Her heart slammed against her ribs, and for the first time, she wasn't sure whether she feared him or wanted him even more. The burning sky over ruined Seoul glowed red like a wounded giant, thick with smoke and drifting ash. Ji-ho, once the quiet engineer who lived in a small apartment above a ramen shop, now stood on broken concrete, staring at the horizon where alien warships hovered like metal mountains. His armor, scratched, scorched, dented, felt heavier than ever. But the real weight pressing on his chest wasn't metal. It was the truth he had learned only an hour ago, a truth that tore everything apart. He replayed it in his mind, the secret underground chamber, the glowing crystalline sphere, and a voice, faint but unmistakably human, speaking from inside that alien device. "They didn't come here to conquer. They came because of something you built." Those words hit him like a punch he couldn't recover from. The Ashur Dominion, the most feared species in the galaxy, had not stumbled on Earth randomly. They hadn't even been chasing Earth for its oceans, metals, or gravity-rich environment. No, they had come because of a weapon signal. A human signal. Ji-ho's signal. One experiment. One abandoned test. One invention the world never saw. And now humanity stood on the edge of extinction because of it. Wind whipped across the ruins, carrying the smell of burnt metal and distant screams. Behind him, survivors were gathering in the shattered remains of Mapo Bridge, where the human resistance had made its temporary base. Their faces were tired, dirty, streaked with soot, but their eyes still glowed with that strange human light that refused to die. Ha-eun approached him with slow, steady steps. Her short black hair, once neatly tied in a military bun, now scattered wildly across her forehead. Yet she moved with determined grace. "The commander everyone depended on." "You're still thinking about what the AI told us," she said quietly. Ji-ho didn't turn. "Thinking?" "No, drowning." Ha-eun stepped beside him. "The weapon you made, the quantum pulse array, was unfinished. It wasn't meant to be found, and you had no idea aliens existed." "That doesn't matter." Ji-ho clenched his fists. "The signal woke something. Called something. I built the first spark of the war." Ha-eun shook her head. "No. The Ashur chose to invade. They made that decision. Not you." But guilt sat in his stomach like cold stone. From the sky, one of the Ashur dreadnoughts boomed as it released a swarm of drones. Blue fire rained down like metallic comets on a distant district. The ground trembled. Ha-eun grabbed his shoulder. "Look at them," she whispered, pointing back at the survivors. "They're looking to you more than anyone." Ji-ho finally turned, and his chest tightened. Mothers clutching children. Wounded soldiers leaning against collapsed structures. Teenagers who should have been in school, now gripping metal pipes as weapons. And every one of them staring at him with a spark of belief. Belief he didn't deserve. Ha-eun continued softly. "They don't know the truth. They don't need to know. What they do know is that you are the only engineer alive who understands Ashur tech enough to reverse it, to break it, to save us." Ji-ho closed his eyes. "Save us from the mistake I made." She didn't deny it. She didn't comfort him. She simply said the one thing he respected her for. "Then fix it." Silence settled between them. A heavy silence broken by the sudden roar of engines overhead. Ji-ho looked up, and his jaw tightened. An Ashur Vanguard Walker, a towering six-legged war machine, was approaching from the river road. Its massive body pulsed with violet energy. Each step crushed abandoned cars like tin cans. Soldiers shouted warnings. Civilians screamed. Ha-eun reached for her rifle. But Ji-ho already knew. The time for guilt was over. If his creation had started this war, then he would be the one to finish it. He grabbed the pulse stabilizer from his tool pack and sprinted toward the walker. Ha-eun swore loudly and ran after him, but Ji-ho didn't slow down. The walker's particle cannons powered up, glowing brighter with each second. Their hum vibrated through the air. One blast would wipe out everyone hiding under the bridge. Ji-ho skidded behind a collapsed bus, pulled wires from the stabilizer, snapped 2 with his teeth, rewired 3 others, and slammed an energy cell into the slot. The device sputtered, sparked, then hummed with dangerous instability. Ha-eun dropped beside him. "Tell me the thing won't explode just by looking at it." "It will," Ji-ho said breathlessly, "but only if I use it wrong. That does not make me feel better." "No one asked you to feel better." The walker's targeting beams swept the ground, locking onto the bridge. Ji-ho took a deep breath. "Ha-eun, when that thing fires, a 10-second window opens before it reboots its shields. I need to get underneath it during that." Ha-eun stared at him as if he'd lost his mind. "That's suicide. You'll be crushed." "Maybe," Ji-ho said, "but if I attach this to its core, the stabilizer will trigger a cascading overload. It will destroy that entire machine. And probably you with it." "Probably." Ha-eun grabbed his arm tightly, her voice cracking. "Why do you always run toward death?" Ji-ho met her eyes. "Because I ran from responsibility once. Never again." Before she could argue, the walker fired. A beam of violet energy shot forward, slicing through what remained of a building. Heat blasted across the street. Dust and flames erupted like a volcanic storm. But Ji-ho was already moving. He sprinted through the fire haze. The world blurred around him, sounds muffled, heartbeat thunderous, heat burning his cheeks. He slid under the walker just as the shields momentarily flickered offline. It was enormous. Mechanical legs throbbed with energy. Blue liquid metal pulsed like veins. Ji-ho reached the central core panel. Come on. He ripped open the hatch, exposing the swirling energy chamber inside. Then he placed the unstable stabilizer onto the glowing core. It immediately began to shake violently. Ji-ho whispered, "I'm sorry, and I'll fix this." He kicked off the ground and rolled away as the stabilizer began to scream like a dying creature. Ha-eun was shouting his name somewhere above him. Then, boom! The explosion ripped through the walker like a sun bursting inside a cage. A shock wave threw Ji-ho across the street. Metal shards rained from the sky. The walker collapsed in a storm of flames and crushed itself into burning rubble. Ji-ho hit the cracked road hard. Pain flared everywhere. His ears rang so loudly he couldn't hear anything else. Then he heard footsteps. Ha-eun fell beside him, grabbing his armor. "Ji-ho, stay with me," he groaned. Still alive? Barely, but alive. Around them, survivors and soldiers were cheering as the burning walker collapsed fully into the river. But Ha-eun suddenly froze. "Ji-ho, your stabilizer did something else." A cold chill ran up his spine. "What?" She pointed to the sky. A new Ashur ship, smaller, sleeker, darker, was descending. Unlike the others, this one didn't fire. It hovered, watching, studying. Then a deep, vibrating voice echoed across the ruins, amplified through the ship's speakers. "Human Ji-ho, we know who you are. We know what you built. And now, we have come to claim you." Ji-ho's blood turned ice cold. The real war had just begun.